Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Head Couch Analyst Show. We are finally bringing back some more consistent content with you. As usual, I am your host, Sanders, and my co-host is Pardue. How you doing, bud?
Hanging in there, good as you can be. Pandemic's, starting to end. Things are starting to open up, so
Yeah.
maybe some sports will be coming back soon. That's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, and an announcement on that actually is it's kind of hilarious to me. Is California stated that they wouldn't have sports till 2021, but they just announced yesterday that they are going to have sports starting at the beginning of June. It's kind of funny that when teams start threatening to play elsewhere, they're like, "Oh shit!"
Right?
Let's
We're not going to lose out on that revenue. Right? Exactly.
Uh,
I was thinking the same thing when I saw that come down yesterday. I was pretty shocked. I was like, "Oh wow!" I didn't expect California to be willing to open up for sports anytime soon. So it was a promising thing to see, but I'm still trying to temper expectations. We have seen the sports world starting to come around a little bit. The NBA is making plans to come back. Baseball is making plans to come back. NASCAR made a return. Yep. So it's starting to come around. So hopefully sooner rather than later we can get sports back.
Yeah, I think the big thing is like the Midwest opened up and they did see an increase in spikes, right? But also I looked up just because, our media is always focused on the US and our media always freaks out. Oh no, cases went up, things like that. And I'm not trying to, downplay the situation. But I also looked at other countries that opened up like Italy and Germany. They all saw, spikes in cases. So I think at this point, when people are like, well,
no matter what, it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to spike no matter what. And I'm not trying to like downplay the situation or sound like a dick, but I think at this point there needs to be a consensus that, hey, no matter if we open up now or later, there's going to be spikes anyway. That's how diseases work. So,
right. And on top of that's what like these sports leagues need to prepare for too, is they need to have a contingency plan, because it sounds bad, but at some point, players in these leagues are going to get sick, and a baseball player is going to get sick, and the NBA players are going to get sick. No matter what, it's going to happen. You can't just start up these seasons again and then just have one person get sick and then end it all. At that point, it's not worth it.
I honestly think it's going to be like how it's treated for the rest of time, which is probably now that, we're more prepared, we know a little bit more about it. There's not going to be as much of a freak out. And I'm sure in the years to come, 3 years from now, that's when medical experts will probably say, hey, we handled it correctly, or hey, we overreacted, or hey, maybe we should have done this or that. But that's years down the road. We're looking at the hearing now. So I have confidence that just like in sports in general, especially at the NFL, the season will start on time. And whether we have people in the crowds or not is really going to be up to CDC. So at this point, I don't have a doubt. I remember my dad asking, he's like, you think the NFL will happen? I was like, 100% no doubt. I was like, with the way things are trending and the way everybody's reacting, and even the NBA and things, like the NBA started the shutdown, right? And I think even with the NBA saying, oh yeah, we're going to open up, we're going to do this, I'm like, there's no way the NFL doesn't start. And especially with the California and New York teams been like, all right, if you don't want us to play here, we'll play elsewhere. So.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how those things work. So, although I would like to say to our listeners, please still be safe. Please be conscious about things. Don't just throw caution to the wind.
Right.
the annoying phrase, wash your hands. So let's move on to some of the actual thing that we're going to be talking about today. That was just a small announcement I wanted to put out because California announced yesterday they're bringing back sports. So it looks like the Rams and the Raiders and the 49ers and the Chargers, I knew there was a fourth team, might be playing, in their respective stadiums.
Except not the Raiders, because they're in Vegas.
Oh, not the Raiders, my bad. Wait, there's only 3 teams. There, 2 in LA, San Francisco. Yeah, that's it. The Raiders will be in Las Vegas. Yep, you're right. Okay.
Right.
So, my bad.
It's okay. We're still getting used to the fact that the Chargers are actually in LA.
Dude, I still say San Diego to people. I still legit will say, like when San Diego and like someone will be like, you mean LA? And I'm like, yes, LA. So, anyway, let's get on to like what our real topic is for today. We promised you last week that we would talk about the New York teams, and then we decided at the end of the episode that it'd be a separate episode because it was going to take a while. And I think it will take a while. I think it should take up about an hour, a bit shorter than our normal hour and a half to 2 hour episodes. But regardless, there's a lot to cover with these three teams. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about our initial thoughts about these teams going into the season, and then we're going to talk about where they are headed. The reason I wanted to do this, this one was my idea. The next episode we have is going to be Pardue's idea. We throw around some ideas all the time, but he wanted to talk about teams that had improved over the offseason and whatnot, so we'll get to that probably next week or within the coming weeks. Either way, we got like 4 ideas we're bouncing around right now. The New York teams themselves that we're going to talk about are the Giants, the Jets, and the Bills. And if you want to be a sarcastic ass like I am, the only real New York team is the Bills because the Giants and the Jets play in New Jersey. I remember when that fact came up, I think it was a year ago. There was some guy, he's a Bills fan, he tweeted something like, he's like, the hilarious thing is that the Bills are really the only real New York team. And I was like, what does he mean? And then I thought about it, and I was like, oh, yeah, MetLife is in New Jersey. It's not in New York.
They all play in East Rutherford.
Yeah, they play in New Jersey. So, regardless, though, we're not being sarcastic as we're considering all 3 teams to be part of New York. Let's go with the Bills first, though, here. So, the Bills, their current state and how they're probably going to look going into the future. How do I put this? I've never thought it rational to immediately name division winners post schedule posting. I mean, obviously, it's very easy to predict some. Like, in years past, it was very easy to just say Patriots and you were good. It's usually been easy to say, at least for a few years in a row, Denver, when Peyton Manning was there. It's been really easy to say Seattle, even though actually the NFC West has been quite a toss-up. In the last decade, if I remember correctly, I think Seattle's only won that division 3 times, and the rest were the Rams, the 49ers, and once the Cardinals. Yeah, I think you can correct me on that. The 2015 Cardinals, that was the one time. So
correct.
And then the Colts.
The NFC West has always been a toss-up.
And then the Colts when Peyton Manning was there, and right now you could say the Texans, and you're probably not wrong for the AFC South. So I don't think it's rational to call division winners. So I'm going to be a little bit irrational here and go against my normal theory and tell you that I think this is your division winner this year. The Patriots are a massive question mark. I'm not trying to undersell Bill Belichick or anything, but they barely went 11-5. They went 3-5 in their last 8 games. 3-6 technically in their last 9 games. Did they go 11-5 or 12-4? I'm pretty sure they went 11-5. Let me double check.
The Patriots went 11-5. They went 11-5.
They went 11-5. Okay, just making sure. And you went 11-5 with Tom Brady, and I'm not saying Tom Brady hasn't declined because he has, but he was not the reason that offense was bad.
And it's funny when you say like referencing a team having a down year when they win 11 games.
Yeah, it is kind of funny to reference that, isn't it?
Right, because that's what everybody viewed the Patriots as last year. Like nobody viewed the Patriots as a real threat. But there was still a playoff team winning 11 games. Like, there's franchises that would kill for seasons like that,
Yeah. So, also I looked it up to make sure they were 12-4. So they went 4-4 and technically 4-5 in their last 9 games. I've always said 11-5 and it was 12-4. I knew I made a mistake. My bad. Regardless of that, you finished 4-4 after going 8-0, right? And you started 8-0. The NFL is a hard league, but it was partially to a cakewalk schedule, if we're being honest. And a massive defense who could hold off cakewalk offenses. And I'm not trying to discredit the teams that they played, but let's be real here. When you're talking about the New England Patriots, their defense was just a class in its own, and it's very hard to imagine any of those first 8 teams that they beat winning any games against them. And then they ran into Baltimore in Week 9. They lost to Baltimore, and then they proceeded to go 4-3 after that. And when you look at their schedule, they played some harder opponents. They ended up playing people like Dallas, who they ended up beating. They ended up playing, if I remember, they played the Jets, and they barely... Did they barely beat... I can't remember. I'd have to look at their schedule to really know. So, either way, the whole point of me ranting on this was to say that the Patriots are a giant question mark. I think without Tom Brady, it's way harder to see that offense doing much. And Jarrett Stidham, we know nothing about. So, they're a giant question mark that I won't say they're going to do well or do poorly. I think you just got to say we don't know, and we'll see what happens. If you had to guess, I'd say 7 to 8 wins, but they're just a question mark. So I'm not considering them division winners, I'll tell you that much. As for the Jets and the Dolphins need a few years. I don't expect Tua to be this rookie sensation that we've seen a few quarterbacks be. I just don't see it. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it was probably the right pickup over Justin Herbert. I'll tell you that. But I don't expect, Tua to light up the NFL in his rookie season. So take the Dolphins out of the equation, and that leaves you between the Jets and the Bills, who are the two teams we're talking about. Two of the three teams we're talking about. Sam Darnold's an interesting case. If you ask me, I don't like Adam Gase. I think you need a coach to win a division, and I'm not a fan of Adam Gase. So that leads me to by default, essentially the Buffalo Bills. You got Sean McDermott at coach. They have a great defense. Josh Allen's a pretty good playmaker at times. They just traded for Stephon Diggs. They thought that was the key to unlocking their offense, and we'll see if they were correct. They still got Cole Beasley, John Brown. This is a team last year who brought the Patriots up to the brink, and if they would have won that game in New England, they probably would have won the division, right? And this is also a team who gave the Texans quite a run for their money. It's probably a game they should have won. But in the end, Deshaun Watson's an amazing quarterback, and as much shit as we give Bill O'Brien as a GM, he's actually a really good head coach. So, I don't know. I feel like there's no challenger to the Bills in the AFC East. What do you think?
See, personally, now, if gun to my head right now and I had to pick the winner of that division, more likely than not, I would probably take the Bills. But I'm also not anywhere near as high on the Bills as you are. Personally, I view the Bills not necessarily as a middle of the pack team, but that's kind of where I'm viewing them. Now, when I'm looking at the Bills, I see an eerily similar team to what the Bears were 2 years ago. I don't remember their exact record, but they had a playoff berth and then lost to the Eagles in the playoffs. They had an overall really decent year. And Trubisky was not a great quarterback, but he was maybe slightly above average that year.
Are you talking about the year that they lost to the Eagles?
Yes.
They went 12-4.
And then you couple that with their incredible historic defense. And they had a really good year. Then you see this last year, their defense wasn't quite as strong. Trubisky was god-awful. The weapons on the offense were super lacking. And you saw where it led that team. Now, looking at the Bills, that's sort of how I view them. Their defense is incredible, maybe not quite as historic as the Bears' defense was that year. But their defense is very, very good defense. And then couple that, when I'm looking at their offense, it's so eerily similar. Because
I think the difference is they have better playmakers like Singletary, Diggs, Beasley, Brown. I think it's way better off than what Trubisky had.
Well, while I would agree with that, now when you look at that offense from that really good Bears year, everybody was pretty hype on that. Maybe not like everybody was hype on that offense, but they had good pieces. Allen Robinson, Tariq Cohen was really good that year. They still had Jordan Howard, who was playing decent that year. Overall, they had a pretty decent offense. And that's what the Bills were last year. No, they didn't have an overpowering offensive weapon, but they were a solid unit, and that's what the Bears were as well. Now, maybe Stephon Diggs is the answer to unlocking this offense, and maybe it was the really big weapon that this offense needed and Josh Allen needed to really, really take that next step. Personally, I like Stephon Diggs, but I'm not quite sure he's that guy who's going to really elevate the offense to another level.
Actually, I think he upgrades it. I don't know if it brings him to elite tier, but I think it upgrades it to certainly be a respectable receiving core. Because I remember in the episode when we talked about what do teams need, we talked about wide receiver was one of their needs. Because we like Cole Beasley and we like John Brown, but neither of those guys are filling the number one role, right? And since Stephon Diggs certainly can do that, he's shown that before in years past. He showed it with Case Keenum. He showed it in, I think, Cousins' first year, right? And then Adam Thielen shined a little more. It was a whole same situation that Fitzgerald and Bolden had, right? The team had to decide, who are we going to pay and who are we going to keep. And with the Cardinals, they kept they kept Fitzgerald and traded Bolden to Baltimore. And the Vikings decided we're going to keep both. And then Stephon Diggs threw a little bitch fit about it. And they decided, you know what, dude? All right, we'll trade you. And I think the Vikings were not kind enough to trade him to a playoff contender. I think that was probably Diggs' best way to go. And they robbed the Bills of draft picks. So, it was a win-win.
Now, as I was saying, I agree with you. I believe Stephon Diggs is an upgrade. It is a pretty big upgrade for that offense. But again, I don't think it takes them to like an elite special level.
I don't expect them to be like a top 5 offense. No.
Right. Now, here's where I really draw the comparison. And that's between Josh Allen and Mitchell Trubisky. And I'm sure our listeners are like, what? No way. Josh Allen's way better than Mitchell Trubisky. And while, yes, Josh Allen is better than Mitchell Trubisky.
Yeah, that's not a question.
You that.
We're not going to debate that.
Right. But it's not even
close, by the way. There was a sorry, I'm going to go on a small tangent. There was a PFF debate on Josh Allen versus Mitch Trubisky, and the two guys who were like doing the podcast said it was very close. And as soon as they said very close, I was like, people pay money to listen to PFF say there's a close race between Josh Allen and Mitch Trubisky when it's not close. I think anybody will. I think even Bears fan. I think even Ricky, our Bears fan friend, would take Josh Allen over Mitchell Trubisky. Oh, what a question.
Maybe it's not close in terms of talent level, but there's similarities between the two players. Now, what separates Josh Allen from Mitchell Trubisky is his ability to make game-changing plays. But in the grand scheme, Josh Allen is not your prototypical really good quarterback. He will never be a top 10 quarterback. He will forever be that 15-20 range kind of guy. And it's because, and maybe he'll grow out of it. Maybe he'll get better. But he's going to make those boneheaded plays on offense. Like we saw in the playoffs where he was running outside and they just randomly laterals the ball behind him while being tackled for absolutely zero reason.
That is our dumbest play of the year. It was the dumbest play of the year.
Yeah. It almost cost it. It didn't directly correlate to their loss, but that could have been the game right there. And you can't do that. And he makes boneheaded decisions like that at times. And where was I going? So he makes boneheaded decisions like that at times, and then he has a really, really, he's not very accurate.
No. So fun stat for you. He was 35th in accuracy of 37 eligible quarterbacks. I don't understand how.
Where was Trubisky there? Do you know?
I actually don't, and I can look that up while you're still ranting about it.
Yeah, go ahead and look that up for me, because I actually really want to know that. Anyway, he's wildly inaccurate. And in an offense last year that was catered around a finesse passing game with really good route combinations that relied on their smaller, faster, shiftier wide receivers getting open in little space. And on short routes, like to have a completion percentage in the 50s is pretty rough. It's a cause for concern. And he makes up for it by making plays with his legs and those occasional incredible wow plays that he makes every now and then. And that's what separates Mitchell Trubisky and Josh Allen is he has the ability to make those plays, but he's not ever going to play, in my eyes, at this moment right now, at an elite level. He just isn't that guy. And if that's what Bills fans think he's going to be, and if that's what it's going to take to bring this team to the next level, it's not going to happen. Now, I'm really high on that defense. I really like that Bills defense. I really like Sean McDermott. I love the weapons they have on offense. I really like Singletary. I love John Brown. Stephon Diggs is a great addition. I just, it seems too similar to what the Bears were. And again, like I said, if I were to pick a team to win that division today, I'd probably pick the Bills. But that's also just because that division's pretty weak. That division could very well be the worst division in football this year. So right now, I would say Bills probably take that division. But don't be shocked if they take a pretty big step back and don't meet the level that everybody's expecting them to be. Because a lot of people saying, oh, the Bills are going to be a good team. Bills are going to be a playoff team. Bills are going to win that division. And I'm not buying into the Bills hype like everybody else is. Were you able to look up that stat? See where Trubisky was?
No, I can't find the chart for it. I should actually keep bookmarks of these charts whenever I see them, because I always see them on Twitter and a link to it, and I look at the link, I'm like, oh, that's interesting, and then I leave. But looking at a chart, actually, not the actual numerical chart, but I'm looking at a chart that had both Trubisky and Allen in it, where like their passing was rated for accuracy. They were actually one of the worst quarterbacks for turnover-prone passes. That doesn't mean it was intercepted or fumbled, but like, you know, those passes where like it should have been an interception, or it was batted down but could have been an interception. So Allen rates actually making safer. He makes more safer throws, but he has some of the worst accuracy in making those safer throws. And Trubisky actually lies just under the line for being not safe, and also has the slightly better accuracy. So in other words, I think if you were looking at this chart and you were reading it, Trubisky just has worse decision-making, and Josh Allen protects the ball a bit better with better decision-making.
Right. Which makes sense.
I'd rather have a quarterback who's not going to turn over the ball, I'll tell you that much. So, we weren't here to debate, Trubisky versus Allen. That just kind of came up. But I'm going to go into my thing. So, last thing I want to ask you, do you think any team besides the Bills wins the division for the AFC East?
See, that's a good question, because like you can see some you can. I wouldn't necessarily say it's likely, but I would say it's close.
I think the division's up for grabs by every team but the Dolphins, and that's nothing against the Dolphins. I have high optimism for the Dolphins, actually. I just think they need maybe.
I think going forward, yes, but right now, definitely not.
Yeah, I mean, they were just the worst team, or second worst team, right? I say give Tua a season, maybe in his sophomore year, he makes a jump, and hey, they become a solid playoff team possibly next year. I like their roster. I just, you and I have the philosophy of you need a GM, you need a head coach, you need a quarterback, and Tua might be the quarterback, but I don't think he's the quarterback yet. So, I give the Jets a possibility. I give the Patriots a possibility, and I give the Bills a possibility. But I feel like the Bills are the most likely to win it.
See, and I agree with you, but I believe the Jets, honestly, are a very, very close second. And you never know with the Patriots, because, I mean, now, I believe the Patriots will finish third in that division this year. But you still have Bill Belichick, and we don't know what Jarrett Stidham is. And now I'm not on the Jarrett Stidham train, and a lot of Patriots fans seem to be thinking he's the second coming of Tom Brady. But we don't know. We don't know what he is, though. So I mean, I guess we're going to really find out Yes, Bill Belichick is a great coach, but we're really going to find out how great of a coach he is this year.
I think this is the game where we find out how good Josh McDaniels is at game planning. He may not have had a good head coaching stint with the Broncos, but he's always had a good game plan. And part of that's Tom Brady executing on the game plan, but he also worked those games with Castle and Jimmy G. And so McDaniels has a good track record without Brady, right? Outside of the head coaching gig, I'm talking about as an offensive coordinator. So I think this game really tests, or this year will really test how good Josh McDaniels as an offensive coordinator. Now, I won't judge him fully as an offensive coordinator based on this year, because if Jared Stidham's trash, he's trash, and you can't game plan out of that. If your player is bad, you can't game plan out of that. However, if your player is just okay, you can game plan a few wins. That you maybe don't deserve. So I'm really interested in seeing how just Bill Belichick game plans, but I really want to see what Josh McDaniels is going to cook up for Stidham. So yeah, but my take is that the Bills win it this year. I don't really give any of the other teams a chance for it. I'll talk about the Jets later in a bit when we get to them. But as for the future of the Bills, this honestly goes back to Josh Allen. I think this is a solid roster. I like Brandon Beane as the GM. I really like Sean McDermott as the head coach. If you ask me, those two are there for a while. I think they're going to come at a crossroads next year when they got to decide whether to pick up Josh Allen's fifth option or not. And that really depends on how he performs this year. We don't know how he's going to perform this year, but let me just take a guess.
Right.
I think Josh Allen improves enough to where you're forced to pay him, maybe not a lot, not a ton, but you're forced to pay him, and then he becomes the next Andy Dalton. And I'm not saying Andy Dalton was a bad quarterback, but there was a reason we called Andy Dalton the prime meridian quarterback the last 10 years. If you had a quarterback better than Andy Dalton, keep your quarterback. If you had a quarterback worse than Andy Dalton, you need to get a new one. And if you had Andy Dalton, well, you had Andy Dalton. He could win some games for you. I honestly feel like Josh Allen's going to be in that category, and that's not like a bad thing for a franchise that has had 2 playoff appearances in the last 19 years. They'll see some playoff appearances. I can't actually say you can win a Super Bowl with Josh Allen, at least not yet. There's always room for improvement, but quite honestly, I'm with you on the whole 15 to 20 thing. For quarterbacks, right? I feel like that's probably where he's going to be. And in the future, after you pay him, what do? Right? When you realize maybe the 3rd year, so let's just say the 6th year of Josh Allen, so this is 3 years down the road. Let's say during that 6th year, you realize Josh Allen is not going to get you where you want to go, right? What do you do?
Right. I believe that's kind of the situation where the Bears are in, too, with Trubisky. You know, they didn't.
I think Trubisky's different because they brought Nick Foles in, and like I said in the last episode, I'm pretty sure Nick Foles is going to start. I think they admitted their mistake without admitting their mistake. They just brought in a former Super Bowl winner and said, hey, Trubisky, you better beat him out or you're not going to start. With Josh Allen, though, you actually paid him. The thing is, they're not paying Trubisky. They probably don't plan on paying Trubisky, actually. So the thing is, you're going to pay Josh Allen, assuming he doesn't have a bombshell year this year.
Right.
I just look into the future, and I see the Bills as a consistent, 9 to 10 win team that gets into the playoffs, but loses in, the divisional every year, and maybe there's that one year where they go to the AFC Championship, and, that's it. No disrespect to Alex Smith, but kind of like Alex Smith's teams. Really good, solid quarterbacking, really can only get to the AFC Championship or the NFC Championship when he was with the 49ers.
Right.
I don't know, what do you think their future looks like?
In terms of the Bills, I would say overall, it's bright. I mean, they got a really good head coach. They got a really great defense. They're starting to build an identity on offense around Josh Allen. And kind of like what you're saying is very good teams around Josh Allen, kind of comparing him to Alex Smith, like a team that has the ability to make a playoff run. The only question is, will Josh Allen be able to raise the level of his game to a point where he can get over just the championship step. And at this point in his career, I mean, there's no evidence to say that he will, but I mean, it's only his second year starting. So I still, before I can really give an opinion on Josh Allen and the overall Bills' future, I think we need to see what they do this year, especially since that division is taking a step back. So to give a true opinion, I mean, you'll have to ask me at this time next year, but I think if you were to ask me right now, I would say it's bright, but there's a ceiling, and I don't see a
it's
Super
bright
Bowl
with a question mark. I look forward to the Bills being a good team for the next few years. Like, I'm not like saying they're going to be a bad team. I think they're going to be a very good team, and I think they're going to be formidable. But I don't ever see myself picturing them going to the Super Bowl, at least for now. Right. And that's the end goal for every team, right? Get to the Super Bowl. And I understand not every team realizes Super Bowl aspirations are, prevalent every year. Like, obviously the Dolphins' goal is not to get to the Super Bowl this year. Their goal is Tua the right guy. And if he is, can we win at least 7 games, or can we see some winning from him? Brandon Beane, the GM of the Bills, he said on Pat McAfee's show literally a few days ago, the 2017 season where he made the playoffs, he said when they were making the unpopular moves of getting rid of iconic players, they were essentially getting rid of cap hit, is what he was saying when they traded away players. They were getting rid of cap hit and accumulating draft picks because they told the owner, and Sean McDermott had made a plan saying, hey, this is what we're going to do, and by 2019 we want to be a good team. Turns out they were pretty, good after that. It turns out that Sean McDermott's a head coach, and they were able to be a playoff team without that plan, but that plan has only made them a better team currently. But he said, we didn't plan on being a playoff team in 2017. He's like, we got lucky when the Bengals beat the Ravens, and he's like, we were super excited, to go to a wild card game. He's like, it's amazing how many Bills fans were at that Jaguars game. And if you remember that game, you and I were snacking down some wings, really bored by that game.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was not a fun game to watch. I think, what did it end, like 9-3? 6-3?
It was either 6-3 or 9-3. I don't remember, but it was awful. It wasn't good football.
It was 3-10. I remember the highlight being like a 40-something yard or 20-something yard run from Blake Bortles. That was like the highlight of the game. So yeah. So I think that they've done a good job, and not every team plans to get to the Super Bowl in a year, but the eventual goal is the Super Bowl in 2 to 3 years from now. That is the Bills' goal. Let's win the Super Bowl. I just can't see him doing it. I think it's a bright future, like you were saying, but with a question mark.
Right. Or maybe they're like the Bills of old and go to 4 straight and just lose them all.
That would be such cruel history of repeating itself. I would feel so bad for a fan base that watched 8 Super Bowls and has no wins. Dear Lord. So let's move on to the other team that's in this division. Let's get to the Jets. My first thoughts on the Jets and how they're going to do this year. I have them going 2nd or 3rd. I definitely think they'll be better than 4th. They're 6-2 finished from last year after they started 1-7. Says a lot about how they're going to progress forward. Let's be fair. It was a cakewalk schedule for the last 8 games, but this is still the NFL, and Sam Darnold is in his 2nd year. He just came back from a sickness, and he looked pretty good. I think that's great. I really liked Adam Gase for 2 years. I really liked him the year that he made Jay Cutler pop off, and I really liked him the year that Ryan Tannehill popped off. Outside of those years, I have not liked Adam Gase's track record.
Hey, Sanders.
What?
We're having some serious technical difficulties on this end. You're breaking up real bad.
Okay. Well, luckily for the recording, we'll be good for now. Let me know if you can't fully understand what I'm saying. Sorry to the audience for that. But, as I was saying, Adam Gase has a track record that I don't like outside of Jay Cutler and outside of the one Ryan Tannehill year. Going into this year, the last half of the season was pretty good. I can't say I liked his first 8 games when they went 1-7, and they looked like punching bags. But, I went back and I watched, I shouldn't say some tape. I watched highlights of the last 8 games. just to see what they looked like. Sam Darnold looked nice, and again, these are just highlights. But even in their 2 losses, which was, I believe, the Patriots and the Ravens, they looked dead in the water. Now, I understand a 42-24 beating in Baltimore sounds bad, but realistically, the Jets were in that game for a bit until Baltimore pulled away, and then even then, when Baltimore still had their starters in, Darnold was getting some stuff going. So I have optimism for Sam Darnold. I also have optimism for Le'Veon Bell, because Le'Veon Bell looks way better when he's not the centerpiece of the offense than Sam Darnold is. I think their wide receiver core is a massive question mark. So is their tight ends group. And they got some defensive pieces on defense. I think you really need to see if that contract that they gave to C.J. Mosley is going to work out or not. Mm-hmm. You paid this guy to be the highest paid linebacker, and he played 3.5 games for you. Not a great track record starting. But if he did what he did with the Ravens, and he does that with the Jets, he'll be a good centerpiece. I know he's the guy who has the green light. And if you don't know what the green light is, that's the microphone piece where the defensive coordinator talks to one team on the player to tell them what plays. So I imagine C.J. Mosley will have that again. Jamal Adams is a great safety. There's a lot to like about this Jets team. There's actually a ton to like. I just don't like their head coach and their game plans that they go with every game. So I think a big part of this will be, can the talent on the roster either help improve Adam Gase's game planning, or will the talent on the roster just, with Adam Gase again, just be middling at like 7 to 8 games? There's a lot of potential with this Jets team, but I really just I don't see them succeeding. I can't see it. Despite the 6-2 finish last year, they remind me of a team that finishes really well in the second half of the season, and then they go 7-9 again the following season. That's what they remind me of.
Right. For me personally, with the Jets, I'm pretty much right there with you for the most part on the Jets. They seem like a middling team, but when I look at their roster, this is probably the most talented and well-rounded Jets roster we've seen in a very long time.
Probably since like 2010.
Like the Mark Sanchez days. And people knock on Mark Sanchez and blame him for the butt fumble and all that, but people tend to forget, didn't he go to 2 straight AFC Championship games?
Both he and, this is so upsetting to say, both he and Joe Flacco are the only rookie quarterbacks to go to a championship game. And both lost to the Steelers, by the way.
Well, what about Ben Roethlisberger? Because pretty sure he went 15-1, and didn't he win a Super Bowl as a rookie?
No, he did not. Ben Roethlisberger won a Super Bowl in his. They won in 2007, right? Yeah, 2007 against the Seahawks. That was 3 years later. That was his 3rd year.
Yeah, I think you're right. Ignore me then. Anyway, as I was saying, I believe this roster is the most talented roster we've seen for the...
Sorry, my bad, 2006. It was Ben Roethlisberger's sophomore year. But either way, I know he wasn't a rookie.
It was close. I was close. Anyway.
You were close.
This is the most talented Jets roster they've had in a very long time. And when I look at that rookie quarterback class of Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, honestly, I believe at this point, Sam Darnold will be the best quarterback in that class when it's all said and done.
I'm a fan.
And people, and oh, sorry, excuse me, I forgot about Lamar Jackson. See, I was thinking the main 4. I can't believe minus Lamar Jackson.
I know, you were thinking about Josh Rosen, Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen,
the big 4.
Yeah, the guys who were like all viewed as the franchise guys going into the draft.
Right. So out of the big 4, I believe Sam Darnold, when it's all said and done, will be the best quarterback of all those guys.
Probably.
And now there's still definitely some developmental, things that he needs to work on. His whole seeing ghost comment last year. But I mean, that happens to all quarterbacks, and everybody gave him crap for that. And all the memes
really
came out from that.
Let's be fair to him.
Right. Tom Brady sees ghosts sometimes, people. Yes, he came back in that game, but don't forget, he was down 28-3 in that Super Bowl at one point. He just overcame the ghosts. Now, like you said, their receiver core is less than lackluster. They don't really have a major receiving weapon for Sam Darnold, and I think that's a big issue, and that's something they're going to need to address soon. Obviously, the offseason's pretty much over. There's no top-tier wide receiver they're going to be getting now unless they make a big blockbuster trade for it. But it's not that necessarily really great receivers are hard to come by, but really great receivers are hard to come by. Do you know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
Like, Sam Darnold would be great if you had a guy like DeAndre Hopkins or Michael Thomas.
I was thinking Julio Jones. I would love
like a Julio Jones type.
Yeah, but those are so hard to find. They really are.
Mm-hmm. And because like you can name a lot of really top tier wide receivers in this league, but they are hard to find. Look at the Cardinals. They haven't had a top tier wide receiver outside, obviously, Larry Fitzgerald, but he's been out of his prime for a long time. They haven't had a top tier guy.
Was the most recent one pretty much Anquan Bolden?
Mm-hmm. And outside of Fitz and like the early in 2000, I would say Larry Fitzgerald's prime ended after 2016. And even then, he was towards the end. He wasn't the same guy. Now, it's hard to find that guy. Now, I'm not big on Le'Veon Bell. Yes, he still put up like 1,200 yards last year overall, but I believe he only had about like 800 rushing and only averaged about 3.2 yards a carry, and now that's part of their offensive line. But he's not the same blockbuster player who he used to be.
Sam Darnold was missing for 4 games. There was a point where Le'Veon Bell was playing quarterback.
Yeah.
And when you're the only piece, because let's be fair, it's not like the Jets receivers are very great, all that great. You were just talking about that. When you're going into a game without Sam Darnold, what's every defensive coordinator going to say? Oh yeah, stop Le'Veon Bell. We're fine.
Right.
That's literally going to be.
And you're right on there, but I don't know Le'Veon Bell's age off the top of my head, but I know he's in his early to mid-30s. How much gas does he really have left in the tank? Does he really?
There's no way. I just looked it up.
I'm pretty sure he's in his early
28. 30s. I knew there was no way.
No way!
He's 28.
No way!
He was born in 92, February 18th.
How long has he been in the league?
Bro, he was with the Steelers for 4 years before leaving, and he took 1 year off. So 5 years, technically, and this would be his 6th year. 28 sounds about right.
Man, that feels weird. That feels like he's been in the league so much longer than that. Well, I stand corrected. Sorry. But even then,
we know
running backs tend to start... I don't like running backs.
Yeah, you don't like running... Well, not that you don't like running backs. You don't like running backs who get a lot of touches. But on the other side of this, I liked Le'Veon Bell's production post Sam Darnold's sickness. I thought it looked fine. It wasn't the same guy we saw in Pittsburgh, so I'm with you. Also, I wanted to point something out to you later, and I'll point it out to you after this. So it's about Ezekiel Elliott. For him having a down year, he had like 1,350 yards. But we'll get to that later. My only concern is, like, who do you have, behind Le'Veon Bell? You have Josh Adams and Kenneth Dixon, and you just signed Frank Gore, too. Which, by the way, was a very underrated signing. No one really talked about the fact that he was going to the Jets. It, like, happened.
It's because nobody talks about Frank Gore, period, man. When it's all said and done, he is a top 5 all-time running back, and nobody will ever view him that way 10 years after his career. He's going to be forgotten.
I think he'll be viewed
as
a
shame.
Top 10, but probably not as a top 5. Like, I would maybe make the argument to put him in top 5. Probably around number 6 or number 7 on my list. I'd have to actually look through running backs again. But like the thing about Frank Gore that I think is very underappreciated is I remember there being a post that said Frank Gore will get in the Hall of Fame and he won't deserve it, just like how Eli Manning will get in and doesn't deserve it. And now, you know me, I'm on the Eli Manning shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. I think he's done some great things, but Eli Manning was never... There wasn't really a year or consecutive years where you could say he was a top 5 quarterback for Eli Manning. He never really revolutionized the position. The only thing he did was beat the greatest of all time twice in the Super Bowl, and even then, both those Super Bowls, it's bullshit catches. It's nice to get lucky sometimes, right? So, I don't like that comparison because I don't know if you knew this or not. I want to say it was 12 consecutive years. I'm going to look it up real quickly. I know for 9 consecutive years he had 1,000 yards rushing, but I think for 12 consecutive years he had 1,200 yards scrimmage. So not rushing, but scrimmage.
Jeez. Right.
And I think he finally lost that. I think he lost that record in like 2016. Yep, here's what it is. He surpassed 1,000 yards scrimmage for 12 straight seasons. He's the only player with Emmitt Smith to do that.
That's insane. And nobody appreciates him.
But for someone saying, "Oh, Frank Gore's not that great," I'm like, 1,000 yards straight from scrimmage for 12 straight seasons isn't great. What the hell do you mean? That's amazing. So I think Frank Gore has a case not only for longevity in one of the hardest positions for longevity to be Hall of Fame, but also for the fact that stat is incredible and only Emmitt Smith has him beat.
Mm-hmm. Like, the NFL's all-time leading rusher.
Yeah. So if Emmitt Smith is the only one ahead of you, I think you are more than worthy of being called top 10 in Hall of Fame. If you want to argue semantics with like LaDainian Tomlinson and a few other running backs for top 5, go ahead and do that. That's not what I'm here to do. But I'm here to tell you Frank Gore is great, just like you are. And he's also on this team, and he's going to be with Kenneth Dixon and Le'Veon Bell. There's also a couple other running backs here, Josh Adams and Trent Cannon. I know they just drafted Josh Adams a few years back. If I had to guess, I think Trent Cannon or Josh Adams is going to be left in the dust. They might keep 3 or 4 running backs. They'll keep Bell. They'll keep Gore. I imagine for pass catching ability, they'll keep Kenneth Dixon, and I think they'd keep Josh Adams too. I feel like Trenton Cannon would be the odd man out here. Fun fact about this roster, by the way, there's 8 former Ravens on this team. There's C.J. Mosley, Kenneth Dixon,
C.J. Mosley, Kenneth Dixon,
Rashard Perriman, Brenton Kafausi, which if you don't know who he is, that's fine. He was a defensive end that we used to have, and we cut him last year. Alex Lewis, who was a guard, and also I remember you asking about him, Patrick Onwuasor, his name is Peanut. Yeah, we let him go this year. We didn't extend him, and the Jets picked him up in free agency. So. This team has like 8 former Ravens on it, and they're like Bennett Jackson too. I forgot he was on here too, and they're all probably going to be backups or starters on this roster. It's kind of funny to me just watching like all these players I knew go to one team. As for like the future of this team, outside, I don't think you really said it, but I feel like they're 7 and 9 wins. What do you think? Are they really going to challenge the Bills for 10 to 11 wins?
There's a reality where, yes, I see that. I think 7 to 9 for them is pretty on par. I would say, honestly, this sounds kind of weird. I pick the Bills as of right now to win the division, but I'm higher on the Jets. I believe their ceiling is higher than the Bills.
Yeah, I get that. Is it just going to be a better quarterback?
I think it's the better quarterback. The Jets defense has really great pieces as well, and C.J. Mosley. They have the best safety in the National Football League, and Jamal Adams. I can say that pretty confidently. On paper, I like the team. It's a decent team. Now, the Bills, I still think the Bills even have the more talented roster. And when I look at the offensive weapons that Sam Darnold has, they're definitely lacking, and that's unfortunate. And I think that's what's probably going to hold them back. But I can definitely see them challenging the Bills. The Bills aren't going to be world beaters. Nobody in that division is going to be a world beater. personally, no matter who wins that division, in my opinion, they're going to be a first-round exit in the playoffs.
Well, to be fair to them, whoever makes the playoffs, they do have home field advantage for that one game.
While that is
also,
correct,
remember how
and they are on the East Coast, but...
Remember how weak the AFC can be at times, too.
Mm-hmm.
So, just throwing that out there. I certainly don't think they're making a championship game. I'll throw that out there. And if they're a wild card exit, wouldn't be surprised either. The AFC East is certainly a division that's going to be in some turmoil now that Brady has exited. And who knows, maybe Belichick just says, hey, Jarrett Stidham's like our next Hall of Fame QB, and maybe the Patriots just rule it all over again. The nightmare.
They got Tom Brady in the 6th, you never know.
Yeah, so, I mean, it could be a nightmare for AFC East fans, who knows. So, as for their
Could you imagine?
As for their future, I remember having a debate in a football conversation that I used to be on Twitter about what's the future of Sam Darnold. If you ask me, if Sam Darnold looks middling again, or if Sam Darnold looks like good, but they go like 7-9 again, I feel like Adam Gase is out and Sam Darnold gets a new coach in his contract year, which would suck.
Oh, yeah. Because when you just said that at first, I would say, I think overall that would be good for Sam Darnold. But then you mentioned contract year, which, yes, would be tough. Because when you say it, that sounds like a good idea. Because, like you said, I'm not a big fan of Adam Gase either. I was relieved when the Cardinals didn't hire him because they were interested. I'm pretty sure they interviewed him. But I just don't think Adam Gase is a good fit for any young quarterback. And then on top of that, I just think Sam Darnold could use a young, like that's what I think we're seeing more teams in the league do is try and get like younger coaches to help with their younger quarterbacks. And, I believe that'd be a good fit for Sam Darnold and going on to somebody and moving to a system that might fit Sam Darnold a little bit better.
I'm not going to lie.
Or just a change of culture.
Yeah, sorry, I interrupted you for a second. For Sam Darnold, if he got a new head coach, this might be really unpopular because I know not everyone liked him, but I would really like to see Jay Gruden coach him. I liked his work with Kirk Cousins, and I think he's the reason Kirk Cousins got his huge contract.
Kirk Cousins is the reason Kirk Cousins got his huge contract because he bet on himself.
I'm not gonna lie. I think Kirk Cousins was slightly better in Washington. He did.
I don't agree. But go ahead.
Let me put it this way: Kirk Cousins is doing more or less the same thing in Minnesota as he did in Washington, and in Washington he had no skills players, and in Minnesota he does. Theoretically, he should be doing better, but he's not. I really think it was a game planning thing. I would like it if Jay Gruden had another head coaching chance. I think he got totally screwed by the owner in Washington, and I know not everyone liked Jay Gruden either, though. And if he did terribly, then you know what? I was wrong. Screw me. Move on. But I look at like all the offensive coordinators, and I think about like the head coaching candidates out there for next year. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking at all of them. I don't want Jason Garrett to be the head coach of the Jets. I'd be fine with Jay Gruden. It'd be a good fit, but I don't want Greg Roman to leave Baltimore. So no, I don't.
Eric Bieniemy?
Personal bias.
I think Eric Bieniemy would be a good fit.
Oh, from
OC the Chiefs,
Kansas City. Might not be a bad idea.
And hey, they'll get better draft capital for hiring a minority.
Shit. God damn it. Let's not talk about that. They haven't even voted on it yet. We can talk about that. We can talk about that if they you know what? If Matt Nagy got fired, I wouldn't mind Matt Nagy going to the Jets either.
Yeah, it'd be decent.
I don't know. There's several candidates I like, but they're all candidates that I want for Sam Darnold. I'm not thinking about everything else. Like, if I think about it, Jay Gruden had shit defenses, right? So, if you want an all-around coach, Jay Gruden's not the answer. I'm just thinking about who works well with who works well for quarterbacks. And Jay Gruden is currently the offensive coordinator for the Jaguars, so I don't think he would move to the Jets just to be another offensive coordinator, but who knows. I guess the other name you could throw out there that I feel like people would say is a crime for not admitting would be Josh McDaniels, but I honestly just never see him leaving ever. I don't see why he would ever leave.
But I mean, maybe for a team in the division to go against Belichick?
Yeah, I feel like that's what you would not want to do.
That's fair. I guess you could look at it from both sides, but
I mean, maybe you want to compete against like your former coworker or whatever, but I feel like you'd be like, nah, I know how Bill works. No, let's not do that.
Right.
So, yeah. Future, I feel like my prediction, they remain a middling team. Adam Gase gets fired. Sam Darnold gets a new head coach. Whether it's in his contract year or his option year, his 5th year, I really don't know. But I was genuinely shocked when Adam Gase didn't get fired this last year, and I'll be genuinely shocked if he doesn't get fired after this year if they're a middling team again. Now, obviously, if they're a playoff team, I don't foresee him getting fired. We've seen that happen before. It happened to Marty Schottenheimer when they went to the AFC Championship with the Chargers. And they lost. I believe they lost to the Patriots, actually. But, the future of the Jets just looks... I think it looks bright quarterback-wise. I definitely like Sam Darnold. Don't love him. I like him, though. Better than...
he's still in a developmental phase. I think this is a big year for him to see how good he can be going forward. I think this year is the year we find out a lot about Sam Darnold and what quarterback he's really going to be going forward.
Well, if last year is any indication, he should have a solid year. I mean, even with missing, I think it was 4 games.
Right.
I think it was 4 games, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was 3 or 4 games. He still threw for 3,000 yards and almost 20 TDs. So that's not bad. He needs to limit his interceptions, though. That's his problem. He throws quite a few interceptions. So, yeah, I think that's it for the Jets. They are a team that I have optimism for, but I won't outwardly say they're going to be competing. I think if Sam Darnold is the guy, then that's a place to start. If you got a quarterback, that's your place to start, right? Now, there are some teams that have their quarterback, and they still don't know what to do. For example, the Lions. It's a great example. They've had their guy for years, and they still don't know what to do. I'm trying to think of some other teams who have had their guy. Oh, Andy Dalton, the Bengals. They had their guy. They just didn't know what to do with him.
Yeah.
So, shit happens. We'll see. The Giants. I feel like this is the one that we're going to have the most to talk about. I feel like I have a lot to say on the Giants. And it's not even necessarily about, like, their quarterback. Because we talked about Josh Allen. We talked about Sam Darnold. And we're definitely going to be talking about Daniel Jones. But I want to talk about their coaches first. So first of all, for how they're going to do this year, we have no idea. We're pretty sure here at Head Couch Analysts that the division's between Dallas and Philly, so we're not going to be calling the Giants to win, even go to the playoffs, to be honest with you.
No, definitely not.
But who the hell is Joe Judge? We have no idea how that's going to work. We have no idea if he's going to be good, bad. Nothing. There is no telling how he's going to do, right? There is something that blew my mind when it happened. It still blows my mind thinking about it, and I roll my eyes when I think about it. But the guy who's going to be developing Daniel Jones, at least for now, is going to be a guy by the name of Jason Garrett. Why? Why is Jason Garrett the one developing Daniel Jones? Now, real quickly, to throw some positivity before I go full negative, this is a guy who worked with Tony Romo and actually put out some of Tony Romo's best years. I'm not going to discredit that. Okay, Scott Laser was also a part of that too when he was, or not Scott Laser, Scott Linehan. The other guy I was thinking of was Bill Laser. Scott Linehan was part of that too with Tony Romo. Regardless, this is a guy who made some really questionable offensive decisions, gets really conservative when you need to be aggressive. And I can't help but wonder, is that good or bad for Daniel Jones?
if you ask me, I mean, I guess it'll depend on the situation, but for me, when I'm looking at the coaching situation with the Giants in relation to Daniel Jones, they're already setting him up to fail. It's already it's going to be his second year in the league. It's already going to be his second head coach, a guy we don't know anything about. If you're going to draft a quarterback that high, and if you're going, I believe they traded up. Did they trade up for Daniel Jones, or did they just draft him way early?
No, they just drafted him. Remember, a lot of people said
right.
They should draft. I want to say they said that they should have drafted Josh Rosen. They drafted January. They said he was overdrafted, but
anyway, if you take a quarterback that high, I feel like you should have a coach in place already, or you should be bringing in a coach with him his rookie year that matches his skill set to develop him, kind of like the Kyler Murray situation. Now, for me, it's not setting him up for success, and it's not fair to him. If you're going to make him learn a whole new system, his second year in the league, when his first year in the league was already a struggle enough for him, so you're going to make him learn a whole new system at a coach we know nothing about, a coach who's never stepped foot on an NFL field as a coach. So it's not a good recipe for success. And then you bring in a guy like Jason Garrett, who the majority of the league, I mean, isn't that high on. The majority of the NFL fan base is not high on. And yeah, like, who cares what we think? But Jason Garrett, he, like you said, he's gotten some good years out of Tony Romo, and he did a decent job developing Dak Prescott. But I think we can all agree that Dak Prescott also has a lot more talent than Daniel Jones. And on top of that, we still saw that Jason Garrett limited what Dak Prescott could do at times. And doing that for Daniel Jones isn't going to help him with his development. Now, and that's where I kind of see that situation, because now I might just be a hater because I'm not that big on Daniel Jones. I think he had some flashy plays last year, and he showed a couple flashes last year. But when you're already putting him in a situation where he's going to be learning his second system under a new head coach, a rookie head coach at that, it's not setting him up for success. And then he's still going to be behind a really bad offensive line. Yes, you brought in, I believe, who did they draft? I believe they drafted Austin Jackson. Correct me if I'm wrong. He's a rookie tackle. I like him, but you never know what you're getting out of rookie tackles and rookie offensive linemen in general. Now, you still got Saquon Barkley. You've got a couple. Thomas? Is that who they drafted? Andrew Thomas. Yeah, I was thinking Austin Jackson. I don't know why. Andrew Thomas is who I meant.
People saying that was also a reach as well.
Mm-hmm. And it wasn't necessarily a reach because he arguably was the best I would say that Andrew Thomas was the best tackle in the draft if you were going to start him day one, because I believe Mekhi Becton is a project. I believe that Tristan Wirfs, while he maybe had the highest ceiling, he also probably has the lowest floor now, and so on and so forth. So I think they did a decent job with that pick, but I just don't think Daniel Jones is in a situation where success can be easily achieved. And that's kind of my take on that.
They did draft 2 tackles in this draft, so they did try to beef up their line. The one thing I want to comment on is the skill position players that Daniel Jones has at his disposal. Is that what we would call it?
Yeah, that's a good word for it.
Sure. At his disposal. So we don't need to discuss arguably the best running back in the game right now. Because Saquon Barkley is a great weapon. Real quick tangent. By the way, I would like to say I want to represent my former college here, NAU, because my college quarterback is on this Giants roster. He's going to beat out Daniel Jones. Just watch for it. His name's Case Cookus. No, he went undrafted, but he was picked up by the Giants. Anyways, he has to beat out Colt McCoy for a backup position because there's no way in the world he would ever start. But no. So let's look at like the actual weapons that they got here. So they got Saquon Barkley, right? They got Dion Lewis for like pass catching abilities, things like that. Not that Saquon doesn't have that already, but hey, you've got that.
Decent backup.
I remember Wayne Gallman, I think is his name, was the handcuff in fantasy football for if Saquon ever got hurt. And I know that he's still there. I think he's in his final year, if I remember correctly. They also drafted another running back last year. I think his name was Hillman. I'm going to look up the roster right now. Yeah, Jonathan Hillman. That was his name. Hillman was his name. So they've put some resources towards that position, and I don't think that's the position to worry about. What actually gets me is the wide receiver core, where you have like Sterling Sharp, Darius Slayton, Golden Tate, and then no one else after. Now that's a nice trio to have: Sterling Sharp, Darius Slayton, Golden Tate, and I really think we need to see if Darius Slayton actually becomes a big receiver. I'm not sure if he will. Sterling Shepard, I think he is what he is. I think he's just a number 3 receiver. Golden Tate, for me, is the X factor here. Golden Tate, I think, is one of the most underrated second fiddles.
And he had a pretty good year last year.
Yeah, he did. After coming back from injury, he had a great year. I had him on fantasy football. It was fantastic. Mm-hmm. But I'm not saying just because his numbers were great. He actually did some really good things with Daniel Jones. Golden Tate probably is your number 1 receiver here. And I'm not saying Golden Tate can't fill that role because he has before. He did with Seattle, and then I
wouldn't. You're right. While you shouldn't rely on him as your number 1, he could. I wouldn't say he is that guy, but there's worse options.
Yeah, I think he fills the role nicely, right? He was a great second fiddle to Calvin Johnson when he was with the Lions, and he's certainly shown that he was pretty good with the Giants. I don't think he's Julio Jones. I'm not saying that. But if this is going to be your number 1 guy, or you're hoping Sterling Shepard is, or Darius Slayton is, this isn't the worst receiving group, but it's also not a receiving group that, Corey Coleman is on this roster. Damn. If you remember that name, he was a bust receiver from Cleveland. I feel like Daniel Jones needs kind of like what Kyler Murray has, right? He had Fitzgerald, now he's got Hopkins, and I'm not saying you can get a Hopkins. I'm not saying you can trade, for Julio Jones.
But getting the 2 best sets of hands, arguably, in the National Football League isn't exactly easy. But I get your point.
But it was let me put it a different way. It was really nice for Patrick Mahomes when he had someone to throw to besides Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, right? I don't even remember their names right now, but both their deep threats were pretty good for Patrick Mahomes, and they excelled in his ability to throw with his cannon arm. Sammy Watkins was some sure hands. Now, Sammy Watkins isn't amazing, but that was nice. For Lamar Jackson, Marquise Brown really helped Lamar develop his deep ball game. Right? I really don't believe the Ravens' offense goes deep without Marquise Brown on the team. And I'm just pointing out some young quarterbacks here. I'm not trying to be biased towards Mahomes or Lamar. I'm just trying to point out some young quarterbacks here, or like with Kyler Murray. For a young quarterback like Jones, it'd be nice if he had a receiver who could challenge a defense. But like when I look at Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, and Golden Tate, Slayton might be your deep guy, but in the end, I wouldn't call him the deep guy. So I guess that could be filled by Corey Coleman, who was originally drafted in Cleveland to be that guy and wasn't. So overall, I think he's just missing. I think he's missing a receiver to open up the game a little bit more. Now,
let's also not forget Evan Ingram at the tight end position. Yeah, and now he can also line up in the slot and everything as well too. Personally, I believe that should be his number 1 receiver option. I believe that's the best overall receiving threat he has on the team. Outside, maybe Saquon, but you can go on to what you're saying. I just wanted to make sure he was going to get brought up.
No, I was going to continue on to Evan Ingram, and you can talk about Ingram if you want. I was going to say there was a sure-handed guy you can have in the middle though, which is Evan Ingram, and he was really nice. Daniel Jones liked him last year. He looks pretty good this year. Evan Ingram is more or less, you just said it, but more or less their best receiver without calling him a receiver. But none of this amounts to beating the Eagles or the Cowboys.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And when you look at the defense, right, nothing really pops up outside of Leonard Williams, who was massively overpaid coming from the Jets, right? I remember a lot of people were like, what the hell are the Giants doing? Why would they pay that much money? Blah, 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 blah. And Dave Gettleman's going to Dave Gettleman. You tell me. Oh, I remember they also got a Jabril Peppers from Cleveland last year, too.
Mm-hmm.
Just none of their moves defensively make sense either. Either way, my conclusion from looking at the roster and trying to be optimistic for Daniel Jones is you just don't have the team to beat the Eagles or the Cowboys, let alone the fact that Jason Garrett is the offensive coordinator and that we don't know who Joe Judge is. Forget about coaching for a second, because Doug Peterson wins that automatically, and Mike McCarthy might win that too. Maybe. I'm not sure about that one. But overall roster talent, it's hands down the Eagles and the Cowboys. Theoretically.
Oh, definitely.
Theoretically, the Cowboys and the Eagles shouldn't lose to the Giants. Now, I'm sure it'll happen because they play them twice. In
Just because it's a division game. Right?
Yeah, they're divisional games. But theoretically, the Giants don't have a chance. They're slotted to be third. And let's be fair to the Redskins, more specifically Ron Rivera. Not the worst coach either. To be fair, he only has 2 winning seasons out of 8, which is astronomical if you think about it. Coach for 8 seasons only has 2 or 3 winning seasons. Weird. One being one where he ended up in a Super Bowl. But I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that Ron Rivera can't create at least some competitive divisional games. It just looks like the Giants are destined for third in the NFC East again.
I would agree with that. I think in reference to the future of the Giants, I believe they're the one that's the most foggy out of the 3 New York teams.
I agree.
Because because I want to say they have some pieces there, but do they? Because yes, the first guy that pops off the page, Saquon Barkley. And don't get me wrong, yes, probably the best running back in the game right now. No. Christian McCaffrey, best running back in the game right now. Probably the second best running back in the game right now.
I would say from a running perspective, I'd say it's Saquon. From an all-around perspective, an all-around athlete, yeah, Christian McCaffrey is the best.
Personally, when I view a running back, I believe it's not just running anymore for me. It is the guy that...
Fair. Absolutely fair.
CMC is. Just because that's the way the league is. It's a passing league. I believe your running back needs to have really strong passing capabilities to be the best running back in the league. Anyway, off topic. That's the player and the name that jumps off the screen when you look at the Giants now. I know people have heard me say it a million times. I don't like running backs. It's Saquon Barkley. The Giants are going to put themselves in a situation where they could very well possibly make Saquon Barkley the highest paid running back in league history if his career path continues the way it's going.
Touches later.
Exactly. 1,500 touches later, all that wear, and you're going to pay him a ton of money and then cripple your team by giving him that much money. And then what? Then you got Evan Ingram, who has had some injury issues, and he flashes really well, and he's probably a top 10 tight end when healthy, but it's not that it's easy to be a top 10 tight end in this league, but there's also it's pretty slim pickings at that position when it comes to really elite talent. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
now,
what are we going to say? George Kittle, Travis Kelce, O.J. Howard, Mark Andrews.
And I wouldn't even say O.J. Howard. You saw the year he had last year. Zach Ertz. But,
Zach Ertz, my bad. Oh, sorry, I wasn't thinking of O.J. Howard. I was thinking of Austin Hooper. My bad.
Right. And see, those are the mainstay guys. And, even then, there's 3 really great ones, and then the rest are good. You can name, 10 really great wide receivers in this league.
Top 3.
Right. Now, and then when you look at the rest of the roster, and from position to position, how many mainstay franchise guys outside maybe Daniel Jones are there? Because we don't know if Daniel Jones is a mainstay franchise guy. I mean, on paper, like, that's what he's supposed to be. But personally, if you really ask me right now, I think given the way the Giants have built their team right now, the way their coaching staff is built, and the way it's looking to go, and how they're giving him multiple coaches in his first 2 years of his career, the lack of talent around him offensively and defensively, it's not going to set him up for success, and I'm worried about his long-term success. So personally, if you were to ask me right now, I don't view Daniel Jones as a long-term mainstay franchise guy on that team. So when I'm really looking at that roster, and anybody in their rookie class as well, because they're rookies, we don't know yet. So if I'm really looking at this roster right now and being realistic and maybe a little harsh, I see 2 franchise guys on this team, and it's Evan Ingram and Saquon Barkley. And you know how I feel about running backs. Everybody who's listening to this podcast knows how I feel about running backs. You don't pay them. And then you have a good
you don't
tight
make them
end.
the highest paid. You can pay them, but
Right.
not overly.
Right. And don't give them a super long-term contract. And yeah, that sucks for running backs, but that's just how it is. And then the second franchise guy being a good tight end, not even a great tight end, those are the 2 big name guys I see on the roster, and guys that could be there long-term. And if it's just those 2 guys, a running back and a tight end, I just don't like the way that roster and that coaching staff is set up. I'm not all that big on where the Giants are.
If you were to create an ad with like 5 players on it, you're going to throw Daniel Jones on there, obviously. You're going to throw Saquon Barkley. You're going to throw probably Golden Tate because he's the veteran name on there. Ingram, and I'm trying to think of a defensive player you'd throw on there, but like looking through the defensive player names,
Jabril Peppers. I mean, and I like Jabril Peppers, but I mean, like, he's not like anything special. Like, he's a good safety.
Maybe Austin Johnson. I don't know if you know that name. I'm a big defensive line guy.
See, you name that name, and I don't even know. I might be naive here, but I don't even know who that is.
It's okay. He was actually a pretty decent nose tackle for them. But of course, that's for offenses that run 3-4s and stuff like that. Or, sorry, not offenses, defenses that run 3-4s. You know, so my overall take on the future is I have no fucking clue. If you haven't already guessed, I have no idea what to think of this Giants roster. Daniel Jones, I sound biased because I toot Kyler Murray a lot. Which I probably shouldn't be, because you really shouldn't be judging a guy based upon 1 year. But after watching Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson do really well in their 1 year, Deshaun Watson, and then watching Kyler Murray, I'm like, yeah, he's in the same mold as them. I definitely think he's going to be up there. Will he be elite this coming year? Maybe. Maybe not. If he's not elite, who cares? I honestly think Kyler Murray is the quarterback for Arizona at minimum. Right?
Right.
At minimum, he's going to be a top 15 quarterback his entire career. That's how I feel about Kyler Murray, right? Daniel Jones, I have no idea what to say. I'm leaning towards Eli Manning status, which is occasionally...
And that's what I was about to say. I would say his ceiling is Eli Manning, that excused the 2 Super Bowls against, the greatest team of all time. I see a quarterback whose ceiling is 25 to 30 touchdowns max, coupled with 18 to 20 plus interceptions,
Yeah, he just reminds me of a guy who, if you remember, Eli Manning was always that guy that, like, if he went into a game, it was always 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, or 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. You never knew which Eli Manning you were going to get.
Right.
And
even in his prime, that's exactly the way he was.
Oh, yeah. And Eli Manning has always been a number 8 to number 14 kind of guy. And I honestly anticipate Daniel Jones to be that at his best. The 8th best to 14th best. And you can win a Super Bowl with that. But it's up to the Giants front office to create a roster around that. And I'm sorry, I won't make a comment on the coaching because I have no idea how Joe Judge is going to do.
Right.
He's from the Belichick tree.
And
take that with what you
and
want.
You're right. We don't know how he's going to do, but just Because he could be good. You're right. Because he could be a good coach, but coupling it with the situation that is Daniel Jones being a second-year quarterback and now having to learn a whole new system again, that just isn't a recipe for success. For me,
I think it helps.
It hurts them as a
franchise.
think
it helps that the head coach isn't an offensive-minded coach. It means Jason Garrett, for as much shit as we give him, Jason Garrett can focus on just the offense. Jason Garrett doesn't have to worry about special teams. He doesn't have to worry about the defense. He can focus solely on Daniel Jones and my playbook for Daniel Jones. So that's a positive. The negative I was going to say is I don't like Dave Gettleman. I didn't like him with Carolina. I don't like him with the Giants. I think he's a bit of a clown. And when I say I think he's a bit of a clown, I mean his decision-making is clownery. Right. And a lot of Giants fans would agree with that. So, quite honestly with you, the future, I think the Giants are kind of doomed. And that's not Daniel Jones' fault, and it's not Joe Judge's fault. I think that's purely on Dave Gettleman and what is going to be his inability to put a roster around Daniel Jones.
Right. I feel the exact same way. I figured we were going to be pretty on, like I said, I think before we started recording, that we were going to be pretty on the same level with the Giants, because that's just where they are. It's where they've been the past, 5 years or so.
Also, I would like to say, it's kind of a waste when one of your draft picks gets arrested for robbery.
Oh, jeez, yeah, we didn't even bring that up. I completely, not that I completely forgot about it, it kind of slipped my mind, yeah. Yeah, that's not good. Especially because I really liked DeAndre Baker as well. I thought he was a decent defensive back, and they're saying, his lawyer is saying that the charges should be dropped, but when it's something that serious, armed robbery, that's still a giant red flag to me.
So what's funny is, and like I told you last week, and anybody who's listening, you should just always know this. I always bring up the Pat McAfee show because it's all I listen to, and he had some pretty insightful things on this because he's a former player, so he can tell you how things are going. He said his guess, based upon what the police reports were and what the reports have been, is that what happened was there was a big time gamble going on, right? Yeah. And usually when big time gambling goes on, and you don't have cash on you, he said he's viewed things where people would hand over their watches, or they would hand over their jewelry, like expensive $5,000 jewelry, to make up for the not being able to fork over the cash in a bet. Yikes. And he said he wouldn't be surprised if Baker and Dunbar sat there and were like, yeah, we want our money, and when they didn't give him the money and they said, okay, give us your belongings or whatever as compensation, they didn't. That's when they pulled out the weapons and said, we're not fucking around, give us your watch. And at that point, that's not asking, that's stealing on a technicality. But there's also the report that he was, there's the reports that he was apparently playing Madden. That's what the lawyer is saying, that he was playing Madden when this robbery happened, and they are pleading not guilty. That came out today, by the way, that DeAndre Baker is pleading not guilty. If he was playing Madden and he was playing online, it would be easy to look up his online matchups.
See if he had an alibi. But how can you prove that was actually him playing? If he didn't have a mic or something on.
Yeah, you technically wouldn't be able to do that. But the main point of this is it looks really terrible on you when one of your draft picks gets arrested only after a year, 1 year of being in the NFL. And by the way, this was a guy that they traded up for in the first round.
Correct.
It just doesn't look good whatsoever. I want to say they gave up draft picks to Seattle. I think, if I remember correctly, that's what they did. Seattle traded out of the first round, and
I believe you're correct, because Seattle traded out of the first round 3 years in a row, something like that.
Something like that, yeah. So it doesn't look good on Dave Gettleman. So no, that's not Dave Gettleman's fault.
Right, but I mean, it's not necessarily Dave Gettleman's fault, but it comes down to the front office to decide whether or not a player is worth drafting, partly based on character. And I mean, it's still a mistake when something like that happens.
So
at some level for the organization.
We'll see how those cases develop as more comes out, because, I remember when the Earl Thomas news first came out, it was a blame on Earl Thomas, and then literally an hour later, everyone was like, "Oh shit, it was his wife."
Yeah.
His wife went batshit nuts. To be fair, for a valid reason.
But I mean,
I'll give her
don't
that.
have a three-way with your mistress and your brother.
It's so funny to talk about.
That's such a weird story.
I could never imagine.
This off-season's been weird, man.
Dude, I couldn't even imagine having like a threesome or a foursome with like my best friend. What makes me?
I know, right? Like,
why would I do that with my brother?
Even like with not my best friend. Like, even with just, like, total strangers. No. It's just, that's fucking weird.
I mean, some people are into threesomes, but, like...
I mean, sure, cool, whatever. We're getting off topic. This is an NFL podcast.
I mean, it is about Earl Thomas. My main point...
I mean, okay, but... Jeez, yeah.
My main point being is some people are into threesomes. Pardue and I are not. Apparently Pardue is not. I'll tell you, I am not. The idea just sounds really weird to me. I can't imagine trying to be with two girls as a dude, and I can't imagine trying to share a girl. Like, I'll just say those words. Right?
I'd be overwhelmed.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I would be. So, but the other side of that is some people like it, and I totally get it if you like it. But like with a family member, what happens in my bed is not any of my family's business, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's fair.
Sorry, I think it's funny. So, yeah, DeAndre Baker got arrested, and that kind of sucks that one of your draft picks last year ended up being possibly a bust. We'll see how all that plays out. I don't have anything else on the New York teams, do you?
I mean, no, I think that's about it. I think we pretty much touched all the bases. We've discussed their future and how we feel about them. So I think that's about it.
Cool. We got an hour and 20 minutes out of this, so that's cool. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at HC Analyst.
Yes, please.
What did you say, please?
Yes, please.
Make sure you follow Pardue over here at OnTheSportsEZ97. You know where to find me. Actually, I changed my usernames to HCJC Sanders now instead of JC Sanders TBS. So I am now Head Couch Sanders. Yeah, I got nothing else for us. So make sure you visit us. We will be posting weekly episodes. We are trying to tweet more often. It's a little hard right now with nothing going on in the sports world. But yeah, I think that's all for our promotions. So from Mr. Andrew Pardue over here and me, Jacob Sanders, we will see you guys all next week.